So welcome to this second round of the EIT Health Summit series. The afternoon discussion is on new business models. My name is Christina Hertel. I'm a senior program manager for the accelerator program called GoTrack, which is a program that is targeting European companies that have the potential to massively scale. So GoTrack is offering an individualized mentorship program that through strategical guidance and operational execution support can help the companies, young companies, to achieve ambitions within accelerated timeframes. And I'm very happy to introduce to you Turbine. We had the pleasure to work with Turbine in the context of GoTrack for the last 6 months. So Turbine is developing a new technology, a very novel technology based on system biology that they have developed called the simulated cell. So it's kind of an in silico platform of a cell that can be used for target discovery and drug discovery. And it's very fitting today's discussion very much because they used to apply this in a service model with pharma companies. But they are trying to pivot into a more traditional biotech model, and this is what we've been working with them on in the context of GoTrack. So trying to pivot into more traditional drug discovery model and possibly seeing whether it would make sense to integrate these in activities internally as well. So with that, I will hand over to Thomas from Turbine, who will tell you a little bit about their story and the challenges that they are facing and how they approach them.
Thank you, Christina. Yes, thank you, Christina, and hello, everyone. So my name is Tomáš Trök. I'm the head of business development at Turbine. And today I'd like to tell you a bit more about how we're pivoting to a completely new business model in Turbine and why and how we're doing that, and how we're rethinking the way that biotech companies can be built. So this is our story at Turbine. What's the vision and traction of the company, and where are we coming from? So we're basically a team of 50 young and enthusiastic people, mostly comprised of medicinal doctors, AI engineers, software engineers, molecular biologists, and the business people like myself. And we're based in Budapest, Hungary. We're basically, we're setting out about 5 years ago because we were frustrated as a team with the way the pharma industry is having a lot of trouble in getting drugs to be approved. So there's a lot of failure, especially in oncology, and because of a lack of understanding of the biological processes. And we wanted to bring an engineering discipline into the field of biology. And this is why we're building the simulated cell technology platform that Christina has just mentioned. With this technology, we're really trying to bring novel cancer drugs and novel therapies to patients with a high unmet medical need, and we're trying to benefit those patients' lives as much as possible. So this technology that we're building has been around for about 5 years. During this time frame, we have worked with a number of pharma companies, including top companies like Bayer and a few others. And a couple of our predictions that came out of the simulated cell technology platform are currently being tested in different clinical trials. They're being tracked, and they're being observed if they're working or not. We're also developing 3 of our own proprietary drug assets, and these are quite new. These have all been discovered over the last year, and we're currently developing them throughout the usual phases of drug discovery. I'll tell you a bit more about it, how we came to this. But our technology is not new. It has been around for a while. What is really new, and what I'm going to talk about more, is how we're approaching the business and the value capture side of the whole story. So what's the challenge that we're really trying to solve here? So imagine that in the pharma industry, to actually get a drug approved and to know that the drug is working, you really have to build that specific drug in the physical world. You have to build that drug, and you have to put it into patients and then observe if they're going to be toxic and if they're going to be working or not. So just in the case of COVID-19 vaccine development, as we all know, the drugs, the vaccines have to be created, they have to be manufactured, they have to be put into tens of thousands of patients before we can see that they actually work. And this is true for the whole drug development industry, the whole pharma industry, and especially in oncology. it's really a lot of guesswork is going on in the early stages if a specific drug is going to work and who it's going to work in or who it's not going to work in. So if you did the same thing, for example, in engineering and building planes, you'd have to build about 100 planes in the actual physical world, try to make them fly, but 99 of those planes would really just crash into the ground and not work. Only number 100 would be working. So there's a solution for this in engineering. It's the simulation softwares where they're really able to test out which models are going to work in real life and build only the one single model that's going to fly in the end. And it's a really good process. But this solution is lacking in the field of biology, in the field of pharma industry. It's a really big gap, and it's exactly this gap that we at Turbine are trying to fill with our simulation platform. So what are simulations going to be good for? How are they actually going to impact the whole drug discovery? It's throughout the process that we can make the likelihood of success, the likelihood of approval in clinical trials increase by about a factor of 5. So imagine at a pharma company at the very initial stages, if you start the drug development process, you have maybe about a 1% chance of that actual idea, of that actual compound, making it into approval, making it into an actual physical drug that gets into patients. If you bring the understanding of the underlying biological mechanisms to a much earlier stage, you don't have to go to clinical trials, you don't have to test it in humans, but you can use a simulation platform, for example, that we develop at Turbine. You can really increase the chance by about a factor of 5 or even more in some cases. So this is really the ultimate benefit, that you don't have to spend so much money on failures. If something is not going to work, you can stop the development at a much earlier time, and you can really select the drugs that are going to be more likely to succeed, and you can really be smart in selecting the patients in who those drugs are actually going to work and make a difference in the outcome of the disease. So this is the point why simulations make sense. So how are we translating this technology into a viable business model? And that's more interesting topic for this presentation. Originally, the idea was born about 5 years ago. Throughout the usual ideation process of our founders, they created a minimal viable product that we were able to sell to Bayer through their accelerator program about 4 years ago. And they were our first commercial clients. We were able to test out our hypothesis. We were able to learn a lot from Bayer executives on what the problems are in the pharma industry, what challenges they're facing in oncology, and how, as Turbine, we can help them overcome those challenges. So we have succeeded in building basically a service-oriented model the next couple of years from 2017, and we have sold a number of projects to top pharma companies, as I mentioned in the beginning. These were nice projects. They lasted for 3-4 months. We got some money for them. We were able to bootstrap the company and build it up to about 35, 40 people. That was something nice, but it didn't achieve 2 things. And one of those things was that we didn't really reach the impact and the true potential impact that we felt the Turbine platform can achieve. So we didn't have that much effect on the fate of the drug projects that we were working with. So we really wanted to do more on that front. And the other thing that it didn't achieve, that it wasn't really a compelling business case for outside investors. So it was really hard to attract venture money and outside money if you're doing the service model, just because it's really hard to scale. It takes a lot of time to sell those projects. It's very difficult to increase the ticket size of projects. And it's just something that, very hard to improve the efficiency, both timeline-wise and both money-wise. So we decided to pivot from that model. And the rest of the presentation is going to be about how we're pivoting from this business model as we're speaking right now. So this is a current and ongoing process. It's not yet decided. But one thing is for sure, we want to use our simulated cell technology platform not to provide service to pharma companies, but to create our own drugs, our proprietary novel cancer drugs that we're developing either on our own or in collaboration with some other parties. So what are the potential business models ahead of us, and what was the thinking process behind it? So we basically identified 4 different scenarios. What we call scenario number 1 is the full stack drug discovery model. Is basically the usual way that biotech companies are being built today. You have 2 or 3 nice and exciting looking assets. You develop them as far as you can, maybe until the clinical trials, maybe even do the clinical trials on your own. You get outside venture money for them, and you really hope that they're going to succeed, because if they don't succeed, you really fall back and you have basically nothing. So a lot of companies have failed, unfortunately, this way. The rest of the models that we identified are what we call 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, are more geared towards the unique capabilities of Turbine and our simulated cell platform. They're really basically building on the fact that we're able to generate a lot of new target candidates, a lot of new ideas for potential new drugs. That means on the scale of 5 to 8 new ideas per year. It's a big number. It's something that nobody has really been able to do before, especially not develop them. So ideas, that's something that you can come up with, that's fine. How do you make money out of ideas? Well, one potential way is that you sell those ideas. That's model 2.1. We're selling validated targets. Or you select a couple of those ideas and you develop them as far as you can. But you obviously can't build full stack drug discovery around it, since it's very expensive, that's very risky. And so you can't do it for a lot of targets. You have to select only very few. So here we're thinking more about a partnership focused model, where we team up with some corporations who have done this many times over, who have experience in drug discovery and all the underlying processes. And this way we can bring our unique capability of simulations. The other party can bring the unique capability of research and development, the actual physical world. And combining those two, hopefully we can achieve good value inflection points. So you have to keep in mind at this point that at Turbine, currently all we have is computers and smart people. We don't have any vet laboratories. So everything that we want to pivot to, and when we identify a new business model, one thing that we definitely have to build is some level of integration of discovery capabilities, including chemistry, including biological assays, animal testing, etc. Everything that's included in preclinical development. That's something completely new to us. It's something that we have to build basically from scratch. And that's what we're doing right now, is selecting one or more of these scenarios, testing them out in the market, and going forward to raising Series A up on that model. So how can we actually choose from these business models? There are two perspectives that you really have to take into consideration. One is what I call the objective perspective. So you can make some calculations, you can run some financial models and calculate different scenarios. And we did just this. So you shouldn't even look at the actual numbers that we put in the scenarios. It's much more interesting how the different models relate to each other in relative value. Obviously, the full stack model would be the most valuable as per potential enterprise value in 2025, but it would be also the most expensive to develop. So you have to raise a lot of outside money for it. And it would be also the one that's bringing in revenues the latest. So you'd have to keep financing this model for a long time before you can see if it works or not. On the other hand, the selling targets model would be very cheap to do, but it also has a lower potential value, since if you sell all your best ideas at a very early stage, you'll leave a lot of money on the table, and it's ultimately going to be the pharma company who you sold it to who will realize that potential value that's in it. On the other hand, you can make a lot of, well, not a lot of, but you can make some initial revenue with this type of model. So this is really the objective perspective, the financial calculation, what value is lying behind all of this. But that's just one side of the story. The other side of the story is what kind of company do we really want to build? What kind of company did our founders envision when they really started Turbine? And how can we impact the lives of most patients in a positive way, obviously? Which model is bringing us that potential impact down the line? And that's one thing where the goal track advisors have been really essential to us. So both this financial calculations, but also bringing in the soft side of the thinking, let's say. So how are these different scenarios panning out? What kind of organization do you have to build? What kind of talent do you have to bring in? Where are the risks? Where are the benefits? These are all things that we at Turbine don't have internal experience in. A lot of this experience has been brought in by advisors, especially the goal track mentors throughout the last couple of months have been very essential in this thinking process. So what are we going to do in the next year to really test this out and make this real? We want to be testing out two models. The most compelling to us is model 2.1, selling targets. One of our advisors at GoalTrack has even said that new targets are the most valuable thing in the industry, but they're still worth nothing. So it's really hard to sell a new target for good money, but everybody's looking for new targets. So there's really a disharmony in this thinking. This is a business model that nobody has been able to realize before. It's something that we want to do. We obviously have to develop a very good scientific platform to do this, and we have to develop the business in a way that we can sell and create these partnerships with pharma companies. On the other hand, if we fail to do this, if we fail to prove out this business model and that it's viable, we will have to be relying on the discovery capabilities that we have and on the few lead assets that we already currently have in the pipeline and what we are going to create in the next coming years. So as a parallel option, we're also building out our discovery capabilities, both internal discovery capabilities and both in terms of managing partnerships and working with other companies. So we can be a normal, let's say a usual biotech company if we fail to really prove out what the platform is capable of. But nevertheless, what we really want to do is model 2.1, proving that we can create and we can sell novel targets on a recurring fashion and a predictable fashion, and we were able to create as many new drugs as possible for cancer patients. So that's really it in a nutshell. Thank you for the attention, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. So I will encourage the audience to ask any questions in the chat. Let me start here by opening the floor and just asking you, so what do you see as the biggest challenges that you face in pivoting from the service provider model into a full stack biotech?
Okay, so it's two things really. So in the eyes of pharma companies, once you provided some services to them, and then you're a service provider, and it's really hard to get out from the service provider bucket to the strategic partner bucket. It's a completely different level. You have to talk to completely different people in the organization. It's completely different budgets, different authorizations. It's just a very different conversations than providing services. And it's very hard to make the leap from one to the other. So if you already start out as a strategic partner, let's say it's much easier. But again, it's hard to become a strategic provider, strategic partner without proving anything before. So that's a leap that we have to make. And it's also leap because in terms of validation, so scientific validation, we have proved that in the past that we're able to provide very good services, we're able to provide novel biology, but those are really specific point solutions to specific problems that the pharma company came up and gave it to us. We haven't really proven that Turbine on its own can really lead and manage a complex drug discovery process that lasts years. It has many risks, tons of decisions down the line that we have to internalize. We haven't really done this before, so that's again one thing where we have to make as much progress as we can to be able to convince pharma companies that, hey, we're a good and serious strategic partner.
And what kind of capabilities do you have to develop in-house to prove that? Have you thought about that?
Yes, so definitely in terms of everything that's the physical world of biology and chemistry. As I said, we're 100% virtual company at the moment. So whenever you need to test something in a Petri dish, whenever you need an animal model, whenever you need to actually synthesize a molecule, that's something that we cannot do in-house currently. We're not really thinking about building out everything in-house because that's, again, very expensive, very risky. You still have to find some way of specialization, which at Turbine we're not ready to do, and that's not really what Turbine is about. So we're really looking for strategic partners on our end to work with and develop these compounds with chemistry providers, academic institutions, and the likes to be able to develop actual physical compounds and test them in a ever-increasing complexity of biological models.
So with that approach, you're basically operating with not developing into a full-fledged biotech company, but doing it with service agreements yourself, or developing with a pharma company who actually have all that. So that would be co-development in that.
Yes, it can be both actually. So one thing that we definitely need in-house is the understanding of the process. So we need some high-level veterans who have done this and who are able to manage the whole process from Turbine's perspective and for Turbine. What we don't need is the actual physical laboratories ourselves, but we do need to bring the understanding of the process in-house.
And now going back to the target discovery, you mentioned that it's very valuable, the new targets, but nobody wants to pay for them. How are you going to achieve that then, if this is the model you follow? And how are you going to know whether the model you follow is right? Because any deals that you will have will be very backloaded, so you will get very little upfront. And how would that be sufficient to basically grow your company and grow the capabilities that you need to do it internally as well?
Yes. So one thing that you can do is progress from an in silico hypothesis, and everything that we come up with currently is in silico hypothesis. What we can do is bring it to biological validation. And the further down the line you can go in biological validation, and the more complex models you can reach, the more valuable the asset is going to become. At that point, it's an asset, and you can develop it. You can develop it in vitro settings. You can develop it in vivo settings, and of course, the further you go, the more valuable it's going to get. Simply, it's becoming more validated. So we really have to optimize for the right value inflection point and the right stage until which we want to keep those assets in-house, and the point where we want to sell them. It's really an optimization between the risk and the potential benefits that lie behind it.
And that leads me to my next question, which is have you thought about how you're going to decide which target is better suited for you internally versus partnering? Because I guess you will have a lot of targets, and you basically will say, oh, you may make an offering to the pharma partner saying you can pick and choose from these 8 targets which one you want to work in, and then we work on the rest. Or would you actually take the best out and work on them?
No, we wouldn't. That wouldn't be fair with the pharma companies, I think. So there has to be a logical selection criteria, of course. One potential way is that we select a specific modality in which we become experts in, for example, small molecules, or we select a specific indication that we become experts in, for example, lung cancer or brain cancer, and then we keep the targets that are relevant for those and sell out or partner on everything that's different. We haven't made this distinction yet. We don't know currently what it's going to be. It's more likely going to be around or along the lines of modalities, chemical modalities, that we can distinguish upon.
And are your technology only focused on cancer, or can it be pivoted into other disease indications as well?
Currently, it's only focused on cancer, and it's going to stay this way for the next couple of years at least. But ultimately, the model is built in a way that it can be expanded to simulate multiple cells, to simulate different organs. So it definitely can be done. It's not on our roadmap yet, simply because we have received the feedback from every advisor, every potential partner, that you really have to be focused in the early stages of the company to one specific disease area where you have to really prove out that your technology is working. That should be the initial focus. And once you have done that, you can raise the funding to expand the technology and expand on the indications that you're targeting.
Yeah, I think with that, I think we should close the session. There's no questions from the audience. I want to thank you. I think the session was very interesting and very much spot on the topic of new business model, because that's what you are trying to address, and how you change from one model to the other, which is, I think, a challenge that most technology companies are facing today at some point in their lifetime. And it's the possibility of actually pivoting out and moving into another successful business model that will in the end decide who will make it and who won't. Thank you very much, Samad, for telling your story. It was very interesting, and I look forward to continue following your.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure, and we also look forward to working with you. Thank you.